Hello. Thank you. Welcome to Managing Across Tenant Boundaries. It's awesome to see a full room after lunch. I'm Robert Lowe. I'm a program manager in the Office 365 team, and I'm here today with
Steve Silverberg. I'm also in the Office 365 Enterprise Cloud Engineering team. Ready to go?
Yeah, we've got a packed agenda today. We're going to start this talk by covering a framework for making decisions about what's the optimal number of tenancies that your company should have. And I'll tell you what, we're not going to tell you the answer. You have to decide for yourself, but at least this will help. So that's been a popular question. Steve will talk through that. Then I'm going to talk through some options. Hey, once you've decided, if you have more than one tenancy, then how do you enable end-user collaboration across them? Or maybe you've decided you want to consolidate down to one. How do you migrate your users from however many you have into fewer? Then we'll share a little bit about our roadmap in this space as well. And I think we should say up front, this is more than 45 minutes worth of topic. So we'll consider this the start of our journey talking about this. We'd love to talk to as many of you after the session as possible, and also we spend some time down on the expo floor as well. Specifically, I'm often in the data center networking multi-geo booth. So with that said, Steve?
Thank you. So as Rob pointed out, this is our first foray into this topic. We've spent the better part of the last 2 years talking to customers who are either in a situation where they have multiple tenants and they want to consolidate. They could be going through mergers or acquisitions, divestitures. And then we also just get customers basically asking us for a framework of how they should decide whether they should be in one or multiple tenants. So I get the easy part of this presentation. I get to go through the framework, and I think a lot of you will find yourself somewhere in the continuum that we're going to describe, and then Rob gets into the fun part. So we're going to start with two companies, and these really do represent, I think, the companies that we talk to. The first is a company that has multiple tenants, and we've seen companies with multiple tenants because they have multiple brands. There's a variety of different reasons of how they got there. And then we're also going to look at a company that is going through a merger, and they want to do a full consolidation. And there's plenty of reasons why after going through a merger you would want to consolidate, although Rob will also work through when it might make sense to stay in multiple tenants. So first of all, why are we seeing customers with multiple tenants? Well, it happens in a variety of different ways. And organically, we've seen scenarios where, say, large manufacturing companies that may be based in Asia put their US operations in the cloud first. And then over time, as things grow, and they're ready to come onto the cloud themselves, they find themselves in a situation where they've already built up significant effort and expertise on one side, but the IT center of gravity is still on-prem and needs to come to the cloud. And so you can end up with a situation where just organically you end up with multiple tenants. Of course, mergers and acquisitions is a big one. So we have plenty of customers that grow via acquisition, and in some cases they've just found that the cost and effort to consolidate these tenants is more than they're prepared to deal with, so they say, well, let's try and make out with multiple tenants. And then probably the biggest reason that we see is really around isolation and distributed administration. And so one of the requests that we get quite often from customers is they want to have a single tenant, but they have multiple organizations within that tenant that need to be managed autonomously. And by autonomously, they would like full control from tenant level settings all the way down through each workload and user management. And while we have some work underway in the area of admin units, which you may have heard about from the identity team, And workloads like Exchange that have RBAC have a certain level of distributed administration. We just don't yet have that level across all the workloads, and certainly not across tenant level settings to enable that scenario. And so that's probably the biggest reason we see where customers just decide that they can't co-manage the tenant themselves, so they're going to go into multiple tenants. A sort of similar mode to that is around isolation and compliance. So you could see situations where you've got a conglomerate and maybe parts of that conglomerate are under specific industry regulations, and they decide that it makes the most sense to just leave those tenants as is. So those are sort of the reasons we see customers ending up in multiple tenants. And then the question becomes, well, should we try and consolidate? Should we stay in multiple tenants? And again, especially for customers that are just coming to the cloud, especially customers that have many different business units, the question comes up, should we be in one or multiple? And it's really a set of trade-offs that the customer needs to understand that will end up dictating whether or not a single tenant or multiple tenants make sense. In the past, especially on the office side, we'd always recommend customers to go to a single tenant. And from an office perspective, the collaboration experience is going to be the best at the highest fidelity level in a single tenant. Most of the workloads, the first-party workloads from Microsoft, all use the tenant boundary, as essentially a way to control the various features and capabilities that they have to ensure the best experience. And so when we start talking about going across tenant, it is our goal to support those kinds of scenarios, but understand that the very highest fidelity, at least in the short term, will always be in a single tenant. So some of the things that our customers have to deal with are things like the distributed administration that I said, branding. So branding is an interesting challenge for customers, especially where they have very distinctive brands, and those things need to permeate out to things like their SharePoint URLs, things that they're sharing with customers. So they want that branding to be part of the end-to-end customer experience. If we're talking about email, it's certainly possible today, obviously, to have multiple domains, and we have plenty of customers that support multiple domains, customers that manage brands. Something I'll point out, we used to have a 900 domain limit. We've upped that to 5,000. And believe it or not, we have a number of customers that are even pushing that limit. And then the other thing that you have to consider is how often are people moving from one division or organization to another. When we look at customers like our very large government agencies and defense organizations, and you're talking about millions of users, well, it's not unreasonable to think that every month you could have hundreds of users moving from one organization to another. And so that's another important consideration as to whether or not, if this is a regular part of business, if people are regularly moving, then that's something that you're going to want to consider. So let's just drill down into each of these trade-offs. Again, as I pointed out before, I think on the Office side, our positioning is that the best experience from a collaboration fidelity perspective will always be in a single tenant. And there's a lot of things that you benefit from and some challenges that you'll have to deal with when you're trying to collaborate at a high fidelity level across tenants. So let's talk first about the administrative trade-offs. So again, as I said earlier, if you're in an organization with very distinct business units that require administrative autonomy, and that includes the notion that there's no top-level admin, that each of these various businesses can fully control everything about the administrative experience of the tenant and the users that they're managing, that's probably a pretty good sign that you should be looking at multiple tenants. And a tenant really is an isolation boundary. It's the best isolation boundary that we can provide. And even while we're making investments to provide more and more distributed administration, whether it's in the directory, using admin units, you're still going to find that if you're really in that situation where you need that level of autonomy, then multiple tenants is going to be the way that you're going to want to go. There are other scenarios that we've heard customers ask about where, say, you have a single administrative organization that needs to manage multiple groups of users that themselves need to be partitioned from each other. And while we're not going to get into a lot of details about information barriers, that's precisely what information barriers is designed. Now, that's a single administrative group managing segregated groups of users where you can hide users from the GAL. You can think of things like investment banking, where you need to make sure that traders are not communicating with other staff, and you have hardcore compliance reasons for keeping those separate. When it comes to branding, this is another area where you could see a need for multiple tenants, again, especially if you have very distinctive brands that you want to encompass, even with things like your SharePoint URLs when you're sharing information with customers. And it's important that every aspect of that experience with the customer reflects that brand. Well, today that is something that would then mean you would be looking at multiple tenants. Now, branding can encompass a number of different things, and we are looking at doing some work to enable some shared branding, but this is more in the cross-tenant scenario, where, for instance, you may, in a takeover, want to immediately apply your brand to the company that you're acquiring. And so you have your day one scenario, and that's the day that you can present your new unified company to the world, and you want to provide a single unified brand. And so we are looking at shared email domains to enable that, but again, that's really just over email, not encompassing things like SharePoint, where again, you may find that it's super important to keep that branding pure. And so in that sense, you are really looking at multiple tenants. On the collaboration side, this is something that Rob will get into, and I would say that we've got this continuum here, but it is sliding more and more to the right. We're continually doing work to enable more and more capabilities across tenants, and Rob will talk about B2B, which is something that is being discussed here at the conference. We have a number of customers that are using the B2B framework to enable collaboration across multiple tenants. And one thing I just want to point out here, we kind of distinguish multiple tenants in two ways. So business to business, we think of as being essentially companies that are not part of your organization, business partners, suppliers, other organizations that you might partner with, versus a single organization with multiple tenants. And that is, we've given that structure a name we call complex organizations, for lack of a better term. And complex organizations to us are special because there's a level of trust between the tenants. In some cases, the tenants may have been created even geographically before Microsoft had multi-geo. So there could be situations where you have a single conglomerate that has multiple tenants, but those tenant boundaries don't really correspond to how the companies work. Now, on the collaboration side, what we're finding is that most companies in this situation, are very anxious to be able to do things like Teams collaboration, SharePoint, be able to, have an experience where users in one tenant can access resources, and in some cases manage resources in another tenant. And again, we are moving more and more in that direction. So collaboration of the various measures is probably the one that has the most flexibility and by itself may not determine whether or not you're in one or multiple tenants. But when you take all of these things as a whole, that's sort of how you end up with a generalized framework. As I mentioned earlier too, this notion of migration and mobility across tenants. So we definitely have some challenges when it comes to moving workload data from one tenant to another. And if this is something that is a regular part of your organization's day-to-day operations where you have people moving, that might be a reason to think about a single tenant because, again, you're going to have to go through various steps of moving identities and workload data. And so that might be something that pulls you back towards the single tenant. So that's kind of the general framework that we have for how to think about single versus multiple tenants. Now Rob gets the fun part about explaining how we're actually collaborating and managing across these tenants, and understand that while this is the first session that we've had at Ignite on multiple tenants and mergers and acquisitions, this is just the beginning. We're really just starting a very long journey, and it's a problem space that we've come to deeply understand, and we recognize this is an area where we're going to have to make a lot of investments, and Rob will start to lay out what some of those are.
Great, thanks, Steve. Did it make sense? One of the points on the framework that we didn't get too deep into, but is definitely a consideration, is what are you starting with, and what's the cost to change what you're starting with? And that's an area where we're trying to move the needle and make things easier, and by extension, hopefully less expensive too. So let's dive into a couple of examples. The first one, we'll consider the example of Contoso. And these are based on real world customer conversations. There's multiple customers like this, and probably some of you are like this. So in the Contoso case, let's say they've decided to indefinitely remain with users spread across multiple tenants. For some of the reasons Steve described, they want to maintain total admin separation between their business units. But at the same time, they view the tenant boundary really as an administrative concept and not as something that should be visible to the end users. And so really what Contoso wants to do is to enable these top collaboration scenarios across all of the tenants within their enterprise so that the end users all feel like they're part of a single company. So at this point, how many people in the audience work for companies or work with companies that are in this situation where their users are spread across multiple tenancies? Okay. It's real. It actually aligns with some of the data that we have as well. Like Steve said, very large number of our enterprise customers and smaller customers too. When we talk to customers, and we want to hear your feedback too, consistently these collaboration scenarios rose to the top. Number one, I need to be able to find people across the organization. Finding people is the foundation for then subsequently interacting with them, sending them emails, chatting, all that stuff. But if I can't find them or know that they even work for us, then how can I subsequently interact with them? The next thing that we hear very frequently is, hey, we need to be able to share a free busy. And the good news is that this has worked for a long time, and it's something that we have available today. We also hear that customers say, hey, Teams is great. It's taking off in our organization, but we want all of our users across all of the tenants in our organization to be able to participate in Teams, right? And be able to find each other and chat and access the documents that are part of Teams. Very, very similar scenario. You probably want users to be accessing Office 365 groups, shared content on SharePoint, Power BI, and so on. So I think that we should acknowledge that there are definitely more things you want to do than just this, right? But does this more or less align with the top things, the top priorities? Some head shaking. Missing one. What am I missing? He said we're missing basically permissions to exchange across tenant. So we'll get to that. There's other things that we hear too, like Azure Information Protection, Yammer, and other Office 365 applications. But for the rest of this talk, we're going to focus on these top ones, get through that, and then we're happy to talk more about other scenarios as well. So traditionally, the way to enable a unified global address list across multiple organizations is via some kind of gal sync. How many people have some flavor of gal sync running today? It seems like a little fewer than the number of people that have multiple tenants, so that's interesting. This is definitely something that can be custom built. You can customize a gal sync solution for yourself, but increasingly as customers have if you have your user populations moving up to the cloud, customers are asking for a solution that doesn't involve more on-premises components. And so I wanted to highlight that we do have available a solution today called Active Directory Synchronization Service. This is a solution that comes with Microsoft Services, so it's a managed service. And it is a subscription model that you can, based on the number of directories you want to synchronize, pay a monthly subscription to have this running either indefinitely or for as long as you like. And so this is essentially a gal sync running in the cloud that supports direct tenant-to-tenant synchronization in order to give you that unified gal across all of your tenants. It can also be used to provision users across tenants. And importantly for this discussion, it also has the ability to provision Azure AD B2B external accounts across the tenants in your organization to facilitate access to teams, groups, SharePoints, and so on. So before I go any further, are people familiar with Azure AD B2B, more or less? Yeah. Steve provided a quick overview of it. Without getting into the tech too deep, it is the tech that enables access to the things that I just mentioned, teams, groups, and so on. So by having Azure AD, or Active Directory Synchronization Service, rather, synchronize users as B2B users across tenants, this can enable the unified gal. Once those objects are decorated correctly, they facilitate free busy lookups. And also, it can be used to facilitate access to teams, groups, and so on. So if you want to learn more about this, contact your account representative. If you're not really sure how to contact your account representative, then go ahead and email me after the session, rob.lowe@microsoft.com. So now let's switch to the fun topic, cross-tenant migrations. In this example, Fabricam has just acquired Northwind Traders. Northwind Traders is pretty big. They've got 50,000 users. And Fabricam used the framework we described, and they said, you know, we have centralized IT. We want the full productivity and collaboration feature set. We want unified branding. So we want to consolidate the Northwind Traders acquisition into the Fabricam tenant. And so any discussion of migration that involves any number of large user base has to involve what we call day one coexistence. And coexistence will likely last many days, not just one. As Steve mentioned, day one is what we refer to as the day when the deal closes. So this is effectively the day, in this example, when the two companies become one. And unsurprisingly, a lot of the scenarios that we hear about on day one are very similar to the scenarios that you need when you're operating in multiple tenants indefinitely. But there could be some more complexity over and above what you experience if you already had multiple tenants and you're just planning a project to enable teams, for instance. Day one often brings with it very tight timelines. A very popular scenario is shortly after the deal closes, the CEO has to send an email to everybody across the whole company. Has anyone had that scenario? Yeah. So that's hard for IT people because there's a lot of setup that needs to happen from the time that the deal closes to have everything in place so that the CEO can send his welcome email to everybody. There's also this element in this example of branding. So for the purpose of this example, the Fabricam company has a very strong brand. And on day one, they need to ensure that all the inquired employees can send and receive email from the @fabricam.com email address. And that domain is associated with the Fabricam tenancy. And then separate from collaboration and end-user related scenarios, when you put your security and compliance hat on, another key scenario that can arise on day one that might not happen in the Contoso example is that you might not have full visibility into what are the settings in this other big tenancy that I acquired. Is the level of multi-factor auth up to my standards? Is the conditional access up to my standards? And so there's a need for policy and settings reconciliation as well. So you might be thinking, this sounds challenging, and it is, admittedly, today. But we're starting to work on solutions, and here's some things that you can do today. ADSS, as we mentioned earlier, can be used to provision accounts for day one, and this is often why ADSS is purchased, actually. In the Microsoft product set, the only way that we can facilitate an email address email domain sharing across tenants is by utilizing an on-premises Exchange server. On-premises Exchange server does support address rewrite, which is a solution that effectively intercepts mail on the way out and rebrands the address in the header so that it matches the domain that you want it to. And on the way in, intercepts the mail and rewrites the domain so that it gets delivered to the right place. We do have partners, though, and you can visit some of them on the expo floor here at Ignite, that do have address rewrite solutions that are based in the cloud as well. So I encourage you to check that out. We also recently announced a new admin role called Global Reader. This role can be useful for a whole number of things. Has anyone heard of it before? Yeah, good. This is basically gives you all the same, it gives you access to all of the same admin portals that Global Admin has, except as the name suggests, you can only read the settings. And so for policy reconciliation across newly acquired tenants, or indeed across any number of tenants, this could be something that could help if somebody needs access to view the settings from an audit perspective. You can use Global Reader without having to worry about people tampering with things they shouldn't. And then finally, let's acknowledge that there is a little bit of a challenge here, because if you want to use Azure AD B2B as the solution for day one access to Teams and SharePoint, we don't today support converting an Azure AD B2B user to a full regular user. Regular user is not a technical term. But what we mean by that in this example is a user that was provisioned directly into the Fabricam tenant. So what this effectively means is that if you have users that were provisioned into your tenant, either because they're invited using the AD B2B invitation model, or something like ADSS, provision them as B2B users, and then you want them to subsequently migrate, it might mean that you have to create new user accounts for those users that are internal to the destination tenant. And so this is something that we realize we need to fix. We are working on it. We don't have a technology announcement at Ignite to explain exactly how we're going to fix it, but it's something that I wanted to acknowledge. As a best practice in the meantime, consider hopefully it's easier to just update group membership if users get new accounts when they're migrating versus crawling ACLs if users were given access to docs one by one. Okay, so we're past day one, and now it's time to migrate. So our big announcement in this talk is our cross-tenant mailbox migration tech, which is currently in private preview. We plan to go to public preview with this tech starting in H1 2020, sometime in H1 2020. And to share a little bit about the private preview, is anyone in the audience, did anyone participate in the private preview? Couple? We just looking at the last, say, 3 months or so, we processed over 100,000 mailboxes to move them between tenants. And overall in private preview, we had around 28 customers participating. But these customers were spread over around 124 tenants. So it kind of echoes what your experience is of these customers having multiple tenants and then, in this case, wanting to consolidate. So we got a lot of usage, and I'll share some of the changes that we're making in order to prepare for public preview. Again, we have to call out the role of our partners here, many of whom are on the expo floor. For moving other workloads, we do depend heavily on the partner ecosystem to be able to move content. And like I said, go visit the booths here at the floor. They have tech, our partners have tech to move other workloads, and of course, they can move mailboxes as well. And if you're in a situation where you have to approach one of these tenant-to-tenant migrations and you don't even know where to start, you don't even know what questions to ask, we recently published this article at aka.ms/T2T migration, which at least covers the sorts of considerations the things you should start asking yourself to make sure that you're thinking about the gotchas ahead of time. So please check that link out after the presentation. So a little bit more about the cross-tenant migration, mailbox migration tech that we just talked about. The first thing to note is that this is very, very robust technology that uses the same mailbox replication service that we use for onboarding moves, we use for cross-geo moves for tenants who are deployed in a multi-geo topology, and is also just used for regular load balancing of mailboxes around the service to keep the load even. And so because we're using this, it's a very familiar tool for those of you who have used MRS to onboard to the service, and it's also very robust. Every day it moves large numbers of mailboxes and large amounts of data. It's efficient because this is direct tenant-to-tenant migration that doesn't need to traverse a middle tier. There's no need for additional infrastructure, either on-premises or something like in Azure. This is directly within the Exchange Online service. And it's also secure. I'll talk about some of the changes that we've incorporated since our private preview, but the key fundamental principle here, which we will adhere to across all of our cross-tenant features, is it takes both sides to set it up, but one side to tear it down. Okay, so what's new? We actually did talk about the V1 at a previous Ignite, so I'll catch everyone up to speed with what's changed since then. We did spend a lot of time deeply considering how the cross-tenant authentication model should work, and we now added a layer of authentication on top of what was initially shown in private preview, so that we are using OAuth on top of just the Exchange Online service, so that the Exchange Online service has to get OAuth tokens in order to access content in another tenant. I'll explain a little bit more about how that works. The other key scenario, which we knew we always needed to do, was some form of scoping. This is the scenario where you don't want to accidentally move the wrong mailbox out of your tenant, right? Imagine if there was a possibility that the CEO's mailbox could accidentally be moved across a tenant. Absolutely, we needed a way to protect that. And so with our scoping model, mailboxes are blocked from moving by default, and then once users are a member of the appropriate group, only then will they be able to move. We now have separate roles for establishing the relationship because it involves AED consent and managing moves. And we also added support for the migration service. So what this means in practice is that now you can use new migration batch or the migration batch technology that's available in onboarding over and above just the new move request commandlets, which were initially available, which essentially move mailboxes one by one. So how does this work when we want to set it up? The first stage of the process is that on the target tenant, we need the identities to be pre-staged in order for us to move the mailboxes into. Again, there's a number of ways you could do that. If it's a one-time quick migration, a lot of customers may just do an export and import from the source into the destination. If there's going to be a prolonged coexistence, then something like ADSS or a similar type of gal sync solution can be used to provision the accounts and keep them in sync so that the joiner mover leaver process is adhered to across your tenants during the coexistence period. In addition to the synchronization that's required between the Azure AD tenants, we do require a copy of some of the Exchange Online attributes. In particular, we need the Exchange GUID from the source to be copied to the corresponding object in the destination. And this is how MRS then matches what the source account and the destination account should be. And there's some other attributes that you need to copy as well, so that mails that you received before migration, you can still reply to them after you're migrated. So things like legacy DN, X500 proxy addresses. If you're Exchange people, you know about this already from experience with replyability. So when these identities are first created, they're created as mail-enabled users in Exchange Online. And then the next step in the process is that admins on both sides have to create the relationship, as I mentioned. So we're using the same kind of organization relationship that has been available for years that supports free busy sharing. So that's the first piece of the puzzle here. But on top of organization relationships, we're taking advantage of the out-of-the-box features of Azure AD applications that enable consent and scoped permissions to allow our Exchange Online service to get tokens to basically move mailboxes across tenant. So how this works, just a little bit of under the covers. The flow is that in the target tenant, the target admin in Azure AD needs to create a third-party application, and we get that application protected in Azure Key Vault. As part of the creation of that application, the target admin consents to give that application mailbox move permission. So the app has a very scope permission what it can do. It can move mailboxes. Then what we do is the admin in the target shares information about the application with the source, and the source also has to consent to giving mailbox move permission. So at this phase, what we have, if you want to bubble it up a level, is both sides have consented to exactly what permission they're supporting. And once that infrastructure is in place under the covers, then the Exchange Online service, when it's trying to do a move, will get tokens from Azure AD that are scoped to exactly the permissions that the app was granted. And so this is the extra layer of security that we've added on to really bolster the level of security here. And I should highlight that there's no exchanging of usernames and passwords here. It's not like the old days where you had to perhaps share a username and password with someone on the other side. This is all using OAuth. I explained a little bit in depth under the covers. Our goal is to simplify the actual setup of this so that you don't really need to know what's going on, but I wanted to share a little bit about how it actually works. Finally, you're going to want to move the mailboxes. And in this case, what happens, you can use either the individual move request commandlets, like I mentioned before, or the migration batches. And what happens is very similar to an onboarding from a hybrid deployment perspective. So in this case, you're starting with a mailbox and a source, and there's a mail-enabled user in the destination. The commandlets support pre-staging the data up to 90-something% so that there can be a predictable cutover window. And then when you're ready to cut over the move, you can finalize the move, and that active finalization converts the target mail-enabled user into a mailbox and the source object into a mail-enabled user. And what that allows us to do is if the source, the incoming mail that's coming in on the domain that was used in the source, you can have a target address on that object that forwards the mail to the target so that mail flow is preserved as long as that source object is maintained. The other thing to highlight here is that the destination, the usage of the destination mailbox is today tightly coupled with the usage of the new credential in the destination. So what that means is when you communicate with your users that this move is happening, they're going to need to know the details about their new account when they start using their new mailbox as well. But that's essentially the end-to-end flow of how the mailbox move tech works. And like I said, we're planning to go to public preview in the first half of 2020. So great, what about everything else? Mail is important, and we hear from customers frequently that it's not sufficient to only be able to move mail, and we appreciate that. So these are the things that we're going to start working on in the coming months. So we don't have ETAs around when these features will be available, but there's active engineering work happening in the coming months. The existing cross-tenant mailbox move tech does have some limitations. One of those limitations is that we can't today move auto-expanding archives across tenants. And so we need to do some additional work to support the move of auto-expanding archives. And then we need to do work to be able to provide native tools for migrating SharePoint and OneDrive content. And that's something that we're looking at soon. And then finally, Steve alluded to this as well. We're starting work to give customers the ability to share an email domain natively across multiple tenants so that you can fulfill that branding requirement in email without needing something like an address rewrite solution, which is the only option available today. Great. I really appreciate your feedback. We hear that that's near the top of our list of things to do very frequently, so I appreciate that you clapped there. So with that, we do have some related sessions. We wanted to leave a little bit of time, if possible, for Q&A. These are some related sessions you can check out. They're in the deck. And thank you very much for your feedback. If you have some questions, please come up to the mic, and we'll try our best to answer.